Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
We live in an age where masculinity is defined or described as toxic. Cruelty is blamed on masculine impulses. And even inside the Christian church, we're told that we are to turn the other cheek. We're to be peacemakers. The meek are supposed to inherit the earth. And the Word of God says it, and so it must be true. How do we reconcile this with the traditional role of men as we've understood it, a role that is now under attack in our society? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert, and joining us tonight is the author of a book that seems counterintuitive. The title is not what you would expect for a book about Christian masculinity. He's the host of The Radical Christian, available at thedailyrenegade.com. The book, The Warrior Priest Mindset, A Necessary Dichotomy for God's Chosen Knights. We welcome Drew Graffia back to the program. Drew, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Derek. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you again.
A Necessary Dichotomy. I think you recognize even in the title of the book that it's a bit counterintuitive for where we are in our world today.
Yeah, you think of a warrior and you think of a big, strong, fighter, a guy with a sword, and then you think of a priest, which is almost the exact opposite, someone, with a staff in prayer. But in our Christian lives, we're supposed to be both. We're supposed to have, this submission to God, this meek faith, and then we're also supposed to be bold as lions, and we're not supposed to be weaklings who are just, withering away.
It's an interesting concept, and I think it's one too that the secular world tries to warn other people about, because fundamentalists who take their religion so seriously that they're willing to justify violence in the name of God or Allah or whatever are really dangerous. And they sort of lump Christians together with Muslims in that category, fundamentalist Christians, which I proudly wear that badge, by the way. So how do we distinguish then between our role as Christians, as warrior priests in a Christian context, with this caricature that the media puts up there of guys who believe that they're on a mission from God and licensed to do whatever because God has willed it, ordained it, and therefore anything we do in his service is okay?
Well, to those people that are doing these heinous acts in the name of God and in the name of religion, those aren't in his character. It's not in his character for somebody to go, kill their baby because God told them to. That is completely not in his character. It's not in his character for people to shoot up schools. It's not in his character for people to do any of these things, for people to abuse their spouses or their girlfriends. That's not in his character. So if people are taking the stance of he's telling them to do it, I would say that's not him telling you, because that's not masculinity. That's not manhood. That's not being a Christ-like person. That's being fleshly. That's all of that is in line with a certain other being, with the enemy of our souls, Satan, and his gang. That all that stuff is in line with them. So you can really tell who somebody follows by how they act.
So it would seem that people who might characterize your book and the mindset that you're promoting, the warrior priest mindset, are sort of taking the commands of Jesus out of context or ignoring them and looking at certain Old Testament passages out of context when things were different, ignoring the fact that Jesus said, look, go preach the gospel, but if they won't listen, just shake the dust from their village, from your sandals as a reproach and move on. In other words, if you take the whole Bible in context, you see that we as warrior priests are not actually commanded to go out and convert people at the point of a sword.
Yeah, exactly. Because Jesus didn't win people over by force. He's not a man of force. He has everything in his power to be a man of force, but that's not the way he wants things to be done, and that's not the way he wants his children to act. So with all of the ways a person can be, people like to pick obviously the best parts of those things and ignore the hard parts of those things. So if somebody wants to be, a warrior and they want to be bold and they want to be strong, they'll pick all the good parts of that, but then they'll leave out the part about, let's say, a warrior having restraint, so control of their spirit. So fighting a battle as a warrior, but of your own spirit. A lot of people don't want to take those harder parts of the role that they're given, but that's sometimes that's what defines that role. And with Jesus, his meekness and his peace defined him on earth. That was one of his major traits.
Well, I guess let's get down to it then. Rather than allowing others to define what you mean by warrior priest mindset, how do you define then, say, a knight in this context?
Well, when you think of the stereotypical knight, and I'm not talking so much about the actual literal knights as much as I am the Hollywood portrayal or the fantasy movie knight, that's more of kind of in line with what I'm talking about. But those knights always show a devotion to their king, a willingness to serve nonstop, almost like just a complete devotion. And you also see the knight in prayer, and then you see him in battle. So there's two sides of him. There's the devout side that serves the Lord, and then there's the side of him that has to go out and do the physical fighting. So when I talk about the warrior priest mindset, I'm talking about the mindset that I use, that a lot of people unknowingly use, the mindset they carry when they walk through their life of maintaining this balance between lion and lamb and warrior and priest.
And Jesus described as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, but also the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world.
Exactly, and when he came the first time as the suffering servant, all the people wanted was a conquering king. So they wanted to be delivered. They wanted him to come down with force and take back his kingdom. But that wasn't what his purpose was. That wasn't what he wanted to show. He first came as the suffering servant. He showed that side of him first. He told them all to be like him. And then a lot of them, missed the boat because they thought, this can't be our guy. He got killed. This can't be the guy that we're waiting for. But also on the same token, you can't forget that he will come back as a conquering king. He will ultimately show that side of him as well. But to favor one side over the other, it leaves out so many vital things to our walk.
What's interesting in your book, The Warrior Priest Mindset, you address this dichotomy, this difficulty that our Jewish brothers and sisters had, to this day, but certainly back in the first century when Jesus was walking this earth, of accepting him as the Messiah because they could not reconcile his approach, Jesus' approach, with what they expected was the Messiah, son of David. And so you address this dual Messiah concept that many Jews believe now, that there are two Messiahs who will emerge in the end times, Messiah ben David and then Messiah ben Joseph.
Yeah, and you know what? It's very hard to believe. I'm sure it was at the time for them. It's very hard for them to believe that he was going to show up, not conquer the land, and then die. It has to be, just like many people have mentioned, the plan of God has to be hidden from the enemy. So it's there for his people, and he'll let them be able to discern it. But also, it's not going to be, wide out in the open. So when he came as the suffering servant, people just they couldn't fathom it. Not only because it was cunningly hidden, it was hidden in such an intelligent way, but also because that goes against our very nature. Our nature doesn't lean towards being kind. Our flesh rests when it's comfortable, and being comfortable is, hey, nobody disturb what I want to do. And if you're doing that, then I'm going to push you away. I'm going to lash out at you. So he was directly against their nature. That's why so many of them, it ruffled their feathers, because they just couldn't believe this guy was coming down with such authority, but also like almost hands off in a lot of ways.
The lion mindset, you kind of dive deeper into this, the lion and the lamb concept. How do you define the lion mindset?
So for the lion mindset, you think of a lion, and you think of why God chose the lion to show that side of him. And it's because he was bold, he was fearless. The lion is referred to as the king of beasts. So to me, the lion shows royalty, majesty, strength, fearlessness, power, all those traits, and God has all those traits. Now, with that mindset, with all of these mindsets, actually, if you're not careful and tending to them in the way that they're described biblically, you run the risk of showing the counterfeit version of those signs, or you'll slowly pick up counterfeit versions of those traits. So I believe everyone has a direction they lean more towards. Like for instance, I would say David leaned more towards the lion than the lamb, but he had to have both sides. And then his son Solomon leaned more towards the lamb than the lion. So let's say for me, for instance, I lean more towards the lion side. So I have no problem getting out there, being bold, being fearless. But the problems I run into are the counterfeit version of those traits. So being pushy, being overbearing at times, being given over to pride at times. Those would be easier for me to fall into while I'm pursuing this lion mindset than they would for someone who isn't, built the same way as me, if that makes sense. So that it's with those good traits of the lion, there's also traits that you have to steer away from that. And when we go back to talking about toxic masculinity and stuff like that. So, you look at the lion, that's true masculinity. The way that God showed himself on earth was true masculinity. But people pervert that. Like the enemy also is described as a roaring lion. So he is a counterfeit lion. So he shows traits that masquerade themselves as power and boldness, but they're actually overbearing and pushiness.
Bullies, essentially. Letting this false bravery turn into cruelty.
Exactly. And God most certainly was not cruel, but for the undiscerning eye, people can see lack of tact or cruelty, and they could misconstrue that with, oh, that guy's a real man. And it's like, no, he's not. He's actually against God's position by how he's acting.
You open your chapters with stories, some of them drawn from your personal experience. The lion mindset chapter, you draw a fictional portrayal of a lion who is playing with one of his cubs, and then suddenly thrust into a situation where he has to suddenly become the lion. Why did you choose that approach toward illustrating your points in the book?
Well, I chose the approach of a little bit of fiction to intro the chapters because I wanted to paint a picture and set a tone for this book. I wanted this book to be me talking with the person reading it. So I wanted it to be like, relationships, interpersonal relationships are invaluable. You talking to somebody about your faith and all that. I wanted to kind of capture that. So the fiction was a nice way to capture that. And it's just, you can get so much done telling a small story. Just like when you think of parables, that's kind of the same approach with a parable is it's wisdom packed into a story format. So the story helps it settle in. It helps it kind of set the room, but then when you take it apart, you notice what the meaning that's packed away in it is being trying to be conveyed. So I guess that's a long way of saying, it's just a entertaining way to give a lot of information through a story format, a fiction format.
You're following in good footsteps. I mean, besides the fact that Jesus used parables to illustrate his points, so he clearly was a storyteller par excellence in the ancient world. But Tom Horn has done the same thing with his most recent book, The Wormwood Prophecy. Sharon has done similar things in some of her nonfiction writing as well. You can really illustrate a point by using a story that draws people in. And it's effective. And it's interesting because as you describe the story there, and I don't want to give too much away, hoping people will pick up the book, but it reminded me of some men that I know who around their children are, great big teddy bears, but woe unto the person who poses a threat to that man's family. Is that kind of the sense that you're conveying here with the lion mindset?
Exactly, because it takes wisdom to act out these roles and to be these traits. You don't just go on idle through your Christian life and hope you're doing just fine cruising through it. If you go too hard while being in that lion mindset, you will become a bully. You will overreact. You will go too hard in certain areas that don't call for that. But let's say you have that good balance. Then you are just like God. When somebody messes with God's children, he'll come after them, and he'll make it known that he was the one that came after their enemies in his name. But if he was that same way with his children, if he went hard and crushed them all the time, there's a difference between that and discipline. But if he was just like that for every situation, then he would lack the mercy and the forgiveness that we need. So just like the father who's protecting his children, he can't treat his children the same way he would treat a grown man who was coming against them. Mm-hmm. But he needs to have that ability.
Yeah, it's wisdom is the key element there. Now, especially when it comes to balancing out what appear to be diametrically opposed aspects of a personality, because as we've mentioned, Jesus was described both as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the Lamb of God. You go from your section on the lion mindset, the counterfeit lion mindset, into the lamb mindset. How do we balance those two? What do you describe? How do you describe or define the lamb mindset?
Well, the lamb mindset, the first word that comes to mind is meekness. Now, a lot of people think meekness is synonymous with weakness. Now, I would describe weakness with a W as the inability to defend yourself, to act in a certain way, or lacking a certain thing needed to act strong. Now, that's not always somebody's fault. Sometimes they're just weaker in some areas. But meekness is being long-suffering, being patient, being submissive. So the lamb mindset, Jesus embodied that perfectly when he showed up on earth the first time. So he was meek. He had all the power in the world to stop everything, to have it go exactly. Well, he did have it go exactly the way he wanted, but he could have killed the people that killed him. He could have stopped them from killing him. He could have not let any of his disciples go through any pain. He could have done all these things, but instead he submitted to the Father's plan. He said, "Not my will, but yours." And he didn't. He was long suffering with us, and we want this mindset when we're dealing with him, because you don't want to approach the Lion of the tribe of Judah with your sins and say, "Hey, this is what I've done. This is how I've acted to people. This is how I've stolen from somebody." I would much rather approach the lamb, the lamb that's known for long suffering and patience, and say, "Hey, this is what I've done. Can you forgive me?" And just how you would expect, the lamb would return with, "Of course I would forgive you. Keep trying, keep moving forward." So that's basically the lamb mindset. It's not weakness, it's meekness. It's the chosen restraint.
How can some of our personal choices affect our ability to adopt the proper mindset? In other words, what are some of the ways that we can inhibit or impair our ability to adopt the proper mindset as, the warrior priest? Okay,
so you have to be in your word. Number one, you have to learn about these mindsets. You have to be learning about the character of God, because like you said with the Bible, you have to know the whole context. You can't just read a portion of it and think that that's just the sum of it all. You have to kind of know the context. I think Michael Heiser says it best. He says it like it's a mosaic with a bunch of different pieces put together to form a picture, as opposed to, a bunch of different pictures. It's just a bunch of little pieces that add into a whole. So let's say you have pride and it goes unchecked. Now that pride in you, it grows and it grows and it starts to blind you. You start to have blind spots. So then when you go and handle a situation that calls for a lion's boldness, now blinded by pride, you may overstep your God-set bounds. You may go from self-defense to assault, for instance. Mm-hmm. Like turn the other cheek. Let's say somebody comes up to you and slaps you and then walks away. Now, I would say what a lion would do would be control himself, use his power to stop himself from going and fixing that. But let's say you're blinded by pride, then you're going to think, "Oh, well, I have to be bold." And then you're going to go and take somebody who's walking away from you, who just hurt you and is walking away, and then you're going to hurt them. Now you've transgressed against love. Now you've done something that is against love because you were blinded by a sin that you let stay in your camp. You let an enemy next to you, and you listen to that enemy called pride. You listen to their counsel, and it led you astray. So it's important to get those sins while they're little and get them out of there, so then you could better, have discernment when the time comes.
Mm-hmm. Back to the lamb mindset, there's something else that occurred to me I should have asked about. How does the lamb mindset manifest in our ability to trust? In other words, what's the proper relationship for us as lambs, adopting the lamb mindset in trusting our shepherd?
Well, just like so when you think of a lamb, you it's not long before the word shepherd comes to mind. Mm-hmm. So lamb are completely dependent on their shepherd. They rely on their shepherd. They're protected and provided for by their shepherd. If a lamb were to go astray, we have all the biblical stories about that shepherd going out of the rest of the flock to get that one lamb. So one of the huge traits I talk about is the dependence on the shepherd. So when we're taking on the lamb mindset, we look to Jesus in his first coming. He was completely dependent on the Father. He made it clear to everyone, I do nothing without the Father first. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He made it abundantly clear that he was in submission to him. Now we are to do the same to our Father. So we are to rely on him. We're not built to go through this life alone. We're just simply not created that way. That's why you see so many problems, especially, in non-believers' lives, because they are infinitely unplugged by their own choice. They're unplugged from the source they're supposed to be plugged into. So that's why you hear the analogy of people having like a puzzle piece missing from their heart, a God-shaped puzzle piece. Mm-hmm. It's a true picture, because it's like you are made to have this relationship with your Creator. Now, when you don't have that relationship, which in that relationship has dependence and all those other things, when you don't have that, you're missing a huge part. So that's like a lamb who's out on its own. They're not animals that are meant to be out off, by themselves. They're meant to be all together.
Part of the flock. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a sense then, because I've talked about this and taught on Ephesians 6 verses 12 through 20, which is putting on the whole armor of God. But I think there's something implied there about the way we are to use that armor. What aspect of the lamb mindset then carries over into the warrior mindset?
What part of the lamb mindset carries into the warrior mindset?
I'm thinking in terms of a flock and then a military formation. In other words, we're not out on the battlefield alone.
Oh, yes. Yeah, see, there's strength in numbers. When you're with your brothers, you think of a Roman or a Greek phalanx formation. That's when you all stand together and you have your shields locked together and you're impenetrable. It's like a turtle shell.
Exactly. Yes.
So you have protection when you're with the flock. Now, and in speaking of the armor of God, in that formation, you have your shield of faith you're holding up and your gospel boots of peace, I call them. Mm-hmm. They have spikes in the bottom of them, so you could dig in and hold ground with your brothers and sisters.
That's right. The Roman sandals, the sandals the Roman soldiers wore were like, golf shoes.
Exactly. And that's another part. That's another thing that fits in with dichotomies, what you wouldn't think. You think of the gospel boots of peace, I call them. They're sandals as well. But you think of that, and you think of, when you think of peace, you don't necessarily think of pushing forward with strength. But that's another part of that same piece of armor. You need the traction when you're doing your walk.
Well, that's another aspect of this that I find interesting, and that's as Sharon and I have studied and talked about Ephesians 6, because she's taught on this as well at a conference this past year. We realized that one of the aspects of this warrior mindset, we didn't speak specifically about that, but the armor as Paul described it, and his description of how to use it in that section of Scripture there, Ephesians 6, he uses the word stand or withstand 4 times in those 8 verses. So it's obviously important enough for him to repeat, stand, 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 not, charge, push, or what. But it also implies that you're part of a, as you point out with the Roman shield and the way it was deployed by the phalanx. It meant you were part of a military unit. You weren't out. We're not out on this battlefield alone. And
no, definitely not.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. In thinking about being a warrior, at least for me, the first thought that comes to mind is a guy out there like the Celtic warriors paint themselves blue and just work themselves up into a frenzy or a bloodlust and just go nuts on the battlefield. But that's really not how we are called to be, is it?
No, because just like when you think of a knight, you don't think of a blood crazed berserker. That's more in line with pagan stuff. When you think of a knight, you think of someone who, just like the lamb, is dependent on their king. They take orders from their king. They live to serve their king. So when you look at a knight, a good knight, you think you see honor, and you see a code that they live by. You look at them and you still see power and strength, but you also see restraint. You also see, hey, this man serves a greater power than himself. And that's why I like to use that motif throughout how I view Scripture. That's one of the things that hits home with me the most.
So what's the difference then between the warrior mindset and the counterfeit warrior mindset that you describe in the book?
So it's similar to the lion. It's like when you're a warrior and you're so used to being strong and fighting, and the problems you're gonna run into is you're gonna start to have issues with love, not showing love in certain situations. Because when it's all fight, it's like, yeah, we need that. But also it's fight in love, fight with love. You have to have that in your mind, because a lot of times, God could have punished somebody. He could have shown them the full extent of his warrior side, but he showed them mercy when they didn't deserve it. That's because he didn't need to go overboard. So when you're thinking just all the time, I'm just gonna be this crazy warrior, and then you start to have like we said, that bloodthirsty berserker type feel to what you're doing. It's like, hey, remember that if you don't have love, you're a clanging cymbal. You're nothing without love. So if you're not operating from that home base of love, then you will become the bloodthirsty berserker, basically the counterfeit warrior, or I think in the book I call him the oh no, that's for the knight. I call him the unholy crusader, or the unholy knight. But it's just a constant balancing game, but it's not stressful, but it's a constant balancing and checking of yourself, because if you don't pay attention to your own walk, no one else is going to be honest. So it's between you and God to make sure that you are cutting out stuff that needs to be cut out and practicing stuff that needs to be practiced. This is an interesting contrast between the warrior, the counterfeit warrior, but also then knowing when to go to war. Who is the enemy, and how do we fight this combat as knights of God? Well, Ephesians 6, mentions our enemies are not flesh and blood, but powers, principalities, spiritual darkness. So what that means is if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you don't have an enemy other than your own flesh, because that's nothing. That's so insignificant. But the enemy there is your own flesh. But let's say when you're fighting somebody, or let's say you're protesting abortion, you're at the building, you're holding up your signs, you're doing what's right, and then somebody gets in your face and starts pushing you and tearing your signs down. That's a real obvious example that you are dealing with a demonic manifestation. You're dealing with somebody who has been either hurt or lied to or wronged, and they ended up in a position where they are now giving the reins of their life over to a demonic influence. So that's when you're not fighting that person. You're fighting the world around them. You're fighting the spiritual forces that are egging them on or that have deceived them. So in other words, we have to look past them to try to discern the spirit that's operating behind them. Exactly. And you think of when Jesus, said, "Get behind me, Satan," to Peter, that's a good illustration of there's something behind him, or there's something that was behind Peter. Unknowingly, Peter was basically telling Jesus not to do the plan for salvation unknowingly, but he didn't say, "Peter, you're evil," or "Peter, you're being a jerk right now." He compared him to Satan. He said, "Get behind me, Satan." So to me, that kind of is a way to show there's something else going on. Just like, Heiser's work, The Unseen Realm, there's stuff that we need to be aware of that's not just right in front of your face. Because if you look at Jesus, he didn't deal with people as his enemy. He dealt with them one-on-one in love, but when it came to dealing with the harder things, he dealt with the beings behind them. He cast demons out of people so many times during his ministry.
In a way, well, similar fashion, he forgave those who nailed him to the cross and said, Father, they don't know what they're doing, so please forgive them. Even though they weren't asking for forgiveness, he knew the people involved weren't the ones responsible, really. It was the spirits, the powers, principalities, thrones, dominions operating behind them. And I guess that brings us to the priest mindset. How do we incorporate the priest mindset into this concept of the chivalrous knight and the warrior, the lamb mindset, the lion mindset? How do we factor the priest mindset into this approach toward living our lives as Christian men?
So for the priest mindset, that basically talks about your faith and the upkeep of your relationship with God. So it's great to say you're a Christian. If you're following it as best you can and you're doing great and you're reading all kinds of books, except you're not keeping up with prayer and the actual word of God itself, that's not a very good priest. What priest would you listen to who didn't read their word? So there's a whole priest side of it that's like, just remember, you are also a priest. You are also called to take care of your temple, to take care of your spiritual walk, to commune with God like a priest would. You can't separate. That's why I use the knight. And the warrior priest is the knight. So with the knight, you can't separate his sword and shield side and armor side from his prayer side. It is forever joined together. So that's the same with the believer. You cannot skimp out on the things of the Lord. You can't just, oh yeah, I read the Bible, or I read my chapter for today, or my chapter for these couple of days, I'm good. It's like that is a horrible priest. I would not want to sit in the congregation of priests who took it that flippantly.
How do we define then the counterfeit? How do we recognize the counterfeit priest mindset?
So that's a dangerous one. So you have the priest who is devoting their lives to the Lord, who's trying to walk out his precepts, who's trying to speak about him to other people, who is modeling their life after him. And then you have the counterfeit priest. Now, that is when people decide to wield the sword of the Spirit as a weapon against their brothers and sisters. So that's when people, they will try to force you to believe what they believe. They will come down on you. They will insult you, tear you apart for not believing certain things. Even if somebody doesn't believe in Jesus, we're not supposed to tear them apart. That we still are bold. We still stand our ground. We still, present what the gospel says. But if we start insulting and calling names, now you're becoming a counterfeit priest. You're becoming a Pharisee, because you are using this religion. And that's exactly what you're focusing on. You're focusing on religion. You're focusing on rules. You're focusing on performance. And everyone should fit into your box, or else they're not true believers. They don't have the revelations you have. It's like, well, if you don't have love, you have nothing. So that's kind of what the counterfeit priest is.
Yeah, we see, and sadly, social media has made it all too easy for them to really spread their influence in the last few years. One of the chapters in your book is titled "The Order of the Tinkling Cymbal." What is that?
Yes, so that is exactly what we're talking about. The order of the tinkling cymbal. So if you don't have love, you are like a clanging cymbal or a loud gong. So all of us, we like to research stuff about secret societies to see, to learn about our enemy and to know what to stay away from. And I think this is very similar to just a secret society. So I named it that way, the Order of the Tinkling Cymbal. So this is a whole group of people who are doing things without love. And there's movements out there that there is a complete lack of love in everything they do. And and like you said, with the internet, like memes, like they'll put memes out there and it'll be like, oh, like you believe in God, then how come you don't do X, Y, Z? And it's just these snarky memes. And then it's like, man, everything I see from your whole movement is a snarky meme about you being better than everybody and everybody being stupid because they don't know what you know. And it's like, okay, so you guys are in your little secret society of people who don't have love, who just sit around clanging their cymbals all day. That's basically what I liken it to.
It's interesting
that without love, it's nothing.
No, you're right. And it's interesting that I've been reading doing some research on a secret society that I'd never heard of before, but apparently has been fairly influential in the modern New Age movement. It's a German secret society, which is maybe why us English speakers haven't heard much about it. But their motto is a modification of Aleister Crowley's rules for his Telema occult system, which is love is the law, love under will. Or, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. But then this society called the Fraternitas Saturni, or the Brotherhood of Saturn, adds this compassionless love. It's like, oh, wait a minute.
Is that even real?
Yeah, exactly. That's like saying, we're going to make it a law that all of our circles must be square. Like, that is a dichotomy that cannot be reconciled.
Yes, that definitely cannot be reconciled.
But that seems to be what you're describing here with the order of the tinkling cymbal. Look, I'm doing all of these rules, which means I am holier than you. But, not showing the most important aspect of it, which is love. Let's bring it back to the night. And this relates to, I suspect, or at least was inspired somewhat by your work in California. Talk a little bit about your career prior to moving out here to the Missouri Ozarks and how that inspired the story that opens your book, The Warrior Priest Mindset, and then your description of knighthood, the code of chivalry, and the knight mindset.
So ever since I was little, I really just had a pull towards knightly things and medieval type things. And looking back, I know that God planted that seed for what he would prepare me for. So I always had a pull towards knightly things. And then as I was growing up, I saw this place called Medieval Times. It's dinner and tournament. Mm-hmm. And they have a bunch of castles all over, but there's one in California. And it's basically where it's an arena setting. So it's like a Coliseum seating. And the performers there, the knights, they sword fight, they joust, they do a tournament, and then they do a fight, like a battle, multiple battles in one night. But it's like there's like lines and characters, and it's this whole big production. There's real weapons, real armor, real horses. And I thought, man, I want to do that. And I remember I applied for the job. I actually got the job, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I could do this once I started, but I kind of was just like, oh, I'll apply. We'll see what happens. And then when I got it, I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to have to be jumping off horses and stuff. And I ended up spending 10 years there. And through that 10 years there, my formative years. So I went in as a completely sinful maniac, basically. Mm-hmm. And I came out a failing Christian, I would say.
As all of us are, yeah.
Yes, but so I spent 10 years there, and as I was there, I lived as a medieval knight. I played that role for a decade, and the one I played the most was the warrior priest, and he had a cross on his tunic. He had black and white, and he was the black and white knight, and he was the warrior priest. So I just always like just held a special place in my heart, and I just kept always thinking, warrior priest, that's perfect. It's a warrior and a priest. So now with all that knight stuff, that kind of gave me the framework for how I looked at the world. I would look at it through like a fantasy knight lens. I would just relate stuff back to that. Mm-hmm. And then reading the Bible, man, you don't even have to have that mindset to notice all the knight themes in there. And like I mentioned in the book, it is the most awesome knight tale ever told. You have dragons being slain. Yeah. You have a prophesied warrior prince or warrior priest rescuing a princess, and you have all these different factions battling, and it's all real. It's just the perfect knight's tale. There's a dragon that gets slain in the beginning of the book, or that gets defeated and a prophecy put over it, and then at the end there's the final battle where they slay the ultimate dragon. He rescues the girl, the bride of Christ. Mm-hmm. So when it came time to write this book, I had so many years of just experience through a knightly lens that went into this. And, at that job, I learned so much about God, because it's easy to say that you'll trust God, but when you have to trust him, when you're jumping off a horse that's running at full gallop and you have to jump off that horse, you have to trust God. Mm-hmm. Because you're doing it. You're doing it. That's your job. No matter what, you got to do it. So, I learned quickly, hey, I can't control whether I'm going to be safe or not. I just have to trust him. And then an interesting thing, and this is 100% glory to God. they always told me, oh, everyone leaves here with something. Everyone leaves here with knee damage, shoulder damage, everything. And broken bones, permanent tweaks to their body. I left there with nothing. I mean, I got my bumps and bruises. I got stitches and stuff. But I always told people God's protecting me. And if somehow I get hurt, it doesn't mean he's not protecting me. It means that that's just in his will for it to happen. But I told everyone the reason why I don't get hurt is because God protects me. And I got out of there after 10 years with no torn ligaments, no permanent damage, no bad knees. And I just, that's glory to God. And I always made sure I mentioned that. So then when this would happen, which I felt like it would, when I would get out of there with nothing, he got to get the glory. And he got to show like, hey, this is what I did. This is my work in Drew.
It seems to me that this is the kind of thing where you could build presentations on this for youth groups with the full night regalia and take this tale, because what you've described here, and I'll mention again an interview that I did a couple of months ago with, of course, now I'm going to forget his name, Doug Overmeyer, where he took the teachings of Mike Heiser and developed it into a youth group Bible study. And the point was to try to connect with kids, preteen, from junior high on up. Even elementary school kids can grasp this because they're fascinated with stories with big themes like this, good versus evil, with dragons and evil sorcerers and wizards, and all of that stuff is in the Bible. But if you can show them that, hey, this story is real and you're in this story, and the ending, we know what the ending is going to be. We just don't know quite how we're going to get there. So we still, even though we know that God wins, and if you're on his side, you're going to be part of the winning side. But what happens between now and then is still an adventure that has to be written, and you're part of this adventure. I could really see this being a calling for you.
Oh, yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to help out children because, in those formative years, without a godly foundation, you grow up finding out the hard way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would completely love to do that in the full gear and everything.
Yeah. Do you still have that gear?
Yeah. I got all the pieces that were not fit for battle. But yeah, I still have my whole setup.
So you could teach on the whole armor of God and show this piece does this, and this is why this is what Paul was talking about.
Oh yeah. Yep. You can see it real time.
The book is Warrior Priest Mindset, a Necessary Dichotomy for God's Chosen Knights. Again, men, we are not called to be milquetoasts. Meekness does not mean rolling over and letting others direct the flow of our children's lives. We are commanded to be the heads of our households, and it means, not being a dictator inside the four walls of our homes, but setting the direction and taking responsibility for what happens. And Drew Graffia, the author of the book, lays this out in a very engaging style. The fiction sections drawing you into the story, then he illustrates the stories with scripture, and does this from the perspective of somebody who spent 10 years actually teaching others how to fight from the back of horses in an entertainment format, of course. But again, the visual that I think kids especially would relate to, of seeing the knights. I mean, when Sharon and I were in England back in May, Drew, we had an opportunity to see a tournament, a joust.
Wow!
At a castle, at Leeds Castle in southeast England, where there's a huge hedge maze, and that's the reason we went there, because Sharon used the hedge maze at Leeds Castle to inspire scenes in her Red Wing saga, which you will encounter soon if you haven't already. But we happened to go on a day when they were having this huge festival, and seeing the joust was an awe-inspiring thing, because the horses that those guys ride are really big. I mean, around SkyWatchTV, through Whispering Ponies Ranch, most of the horses we see are the size of a golden retriever. But these, this was an awe-inspiring, the thunder of the hooves as they pound across the dirt, and the clods, flying up as they charge each other, and then the splintering of the lance when they hit the other shield, and realize, hey, 700 years ago, this was a real thing, and guys had to train for this, because you never knew when you were going to need to actually take that into battle someday. So, men, we need this mindset again. Just transferring it into the modern world, and especially doing it in this modern culture where, again, we are told that kind of mindset, that approach toward reality is toxic. Well, that's our challenge, man. We need to go forward. Drew, thank you for writing this book, and look forward to seeing where God takes you next, and hopefully get to see you in full battle dress here one of these days.
That would be amazing. Thank you again for having me, Derek. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Drew Graffia, the radical Christian and author of The Warrior Priest Mindset, a Necessary Dichotomy for God's Chosen Knights. You'll find a link to where you can get the book in the show notes at vftb.net, Spreaker.com, or wherever else you're listening to this podcast, whenever you're listening to this podcast. Straight ahead, a couple of thoughts on last week's impeachment debacle, and can we impeach the FBI now? That's ahead on A View from the Bunker.
I intend to share undisclosed facts that are stranger and scarier than most people can comprehend, and it is going to shake the public to the bone. And yes, this involves a cover-up of the highest order by national space agencies, including NASA.
The asteroid is 100% certain to strike Earth, according to one space expert who says this is a matter of life and death.
You'd probably have millions of casualties.
Is a planet-killing asteroid a possibility? NASA has determined that the threat is real.
And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And many men died of the waters.
Chief technology experts and working scientists agree with me. But what's more concerning is that this was prophesied in the Bible for the end times.
The Wormwood Prophecy by Thomas Horn. Available now as part of a special offer from SkyWatchTV. Call 844-750-4985 or log on to skywatchtvstore.com. Wormwood is here.
Unveiling the ancient realms of demonic kings and Satan's battle plan for Armageddon. Skywatch TV is proud to announce 2 new special offers. The Veneration Collection with optional Red Wing Saga series. Sold separately, this exclusive offer retails for $90. Yours now for only $35 plus shipping and handling. But wait, now you have the option to upgrade and expand your collection by including all 5 previously released books in the Red Wing Saga. The expanded collection, which includes all 8 books and the Search for the Rephaim DVD documentary, holds a retail value of $190. Yours now for your donation of only $100 plus shipping and handling. So don't delay. Order the Veneration Collection with optional Red Wing Saga series now. Available at SkyWatchTVStore.com or call 1-844-750-4985.
Your weekly reality bomb. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Next Sunday night, we're going to talk about Christmas and why Christians can celebrate Christmas without guilt. Because we've reached a point in our society here over the last couple of years where Christians are actually having to think about whether they'll offend other Christians by saying Merry Christmas. And that's sad. Now, if you don't celebrate Christmas because of the non-Christian traditions that have attached themselves to the holiday, that's fine. If the Holy Spirit has led you in that direction, that is what you must do. And I have no problem with that. But we should base our analysis of Christmas and whether or not we celebrate Christmas or wish others a Merry Christmas on actual facts. And sadly, a lot of the criticism about Christmas is not based on history. It's not based on what the early church thought about the birth of Jesus or the birth date of Jesus. It's based on the mistaken scholarship, the erroneous scholarship, the flawed scholarship of Alexander Hislop, who wrote the book The Two Babylons in the 19th century. He meant well, but he didn't have access to all of the information that's available to us today, and he had an axe to grind against the Roman Catholic Church, and that colored his book. So next Sunday night, I will essentially read a paper that I wrote, an essay, from my website a couple of years ago, because this bothers me that people, well-intentioned Christians, are wanting to celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior and being told by other well-intentioned Christians that they're inadvertently worshiping a pagan god, which happens not to be the case. That was not the intention of the early church. When they settled on December 25th as the date to celebrate the birth of Jesus, and if it's not the intention in your heart, then God knows that. So we'll talk about that next Sunday night, December 22nd, 2019. Merry Non-Pagan Christmas next week on A View from the Bunker. This past week, America embarrassed itself further in the eyes of the world, as if that were more possible, and it's not President Trump's doing, it's the doing of the rabid, never-Trump minority inside the Democratic Party that has pushed Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, into pursuing this impeachment, the articles of impeachment, even though she knows, and this is why she opposed impeaching the president when he was elected, and has opposed it until the last few months, because she knows the Senate's not going to convict. She knows that the grounds for impeachment just simply aren't there, and that independent voters, that middle third of the electorate in the United States, is getting sick and tired of what's been going on. Because any thinking person who doesn't believe everything that they read in the New York Times and Washington Post, or everything that they see and hear on CNN or MSNBC, realizes that the grounds for impeachment just aren't there. That this whole affair was predicated on false information that was fabricated by a foreign agent, Michael Steele, which was paid for, information that was bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign, cycled through the FBI, who knowingly withheld exculpatory evidence from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to get warrants to spy on Carter Page and then other members, and by extension, then other members of the Trump campaign. 3 years of nonsense based on nothing, based on opposition research, and it resulted in 2 articles of impeachment passed by the House Judiciary Committee along partisan lines this past week. Abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, which is absolutely ludicrous. First of all, abuse of power. It's not mentioned in the Constitution, first and foremost. Secondly, the definition of abuse of power is in the eyes of the beholder. If you look back at the political history of the United States, literally every single president, going back to and including George Washington, could be impeached on these grounds. If abuse of power was constitutional grounds for impeaching a president, you could literally impeach every single president in our history. Because every single and this isn't just me saying this, this is historians, constitutional scholars, and others who've made this point over the past week. Every single president has done something during his time in office that's not specifically defined in the Constitution. And the second article of impeachment, obstruction of Congress, for turning to the courts to try to rein in the power of the Judiciary Committee here? That's not a bug in the system. That's not obstruction. That's really how the system of checks and balances was designed by the framers of the Constitution. That's how the system is supposed to work. So again, this is ridiculous. The trouble here, the problem, the damage that the Democrats have done to our system of government is in potentially setting a precedent where the bar for impeaching a president is so low that it essentially becomes a vote of no confidence. That any time from here on where the party, the opposition party to the party of the president, if they've got a majority in the House, can vote to impeach. And if they've got the House and the Senate, they could vote to impeach and vote to remove based on nothing. What President Trump is accused of doing does not rise to the level of bribery, treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors. Abuse of power, not in the Constitution, and a ridiculously low standard anyway, because a lawyer can make that phrase mean just about anything. An obstruction of Congress, again, not in the Constitution, and in this case, absurd, because the president is only doing what the system is intended to do. Use another branch of the government to check the power of Congress. So I am hoping that what the Republicans in the Senate will do is file a motion to dismiss the articles of impeachment as unconstitutional and say, look, you cannot vote on these articles because they don't rise to the standard, which is vague, I admit, but they don't rise to the standard in the Constitution. If, and I understand the White House is pushing for this, and I can see why the president wants a chance to drag this out and just show how ridiculous it is. But frankly, I think most Americans would just like, look, let's just get this done with and get back to running the country, please. Let's not turn this into more of a circus than it already is. I think it would be really embarrassing for Democrats if they simply said, this is unconstitutional. You can't do this. And we're just going to dismiss the articles of impeachment without a Senate vote. Because like I said, if they do set this as a precedent, we will see this happen every time you've got a president whose party does not control the House, and woe unto the president who's elected with the opposition party controlling the House and the Senate. It's going to destroy the system of checks and balances written into the Constitution if this sets the precedent. And I'm going to predict now that this will not get better. I think this is not going to, I think we're seeing as evidence the protest by Antifa in London to the election of Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party, which won a very large majority in the election on Thursday. Congratulations to Prime Minister Johnson, and we look forward to seeing Britain out of the EU very soon. Interestingly, this may also speed up the process of Scottish independence. We'll see how that plays out. But I honestly don't think the United States survives as a union until the end of the 21st century. I don't think we're going to make it another 80 years as a country. I think the coasts are going to get more radical. The rest of us in the middle, to whom they want to disenfranchise by doing away with the Electoral College. We're just not going to stand for it. So I don't think this country makes it to the end of the 21st century. Let's just pray Jesus comes back first so we just don't have to clean up the mess that would result. 2020 is going to be a fascinating year. It's going to be just a lot of things going on. I'll just touch on a few here very quickly. The Watchman Conference, the first one of the year, that's Dallas, March 6th through 8th of 2020. It'll be in the usual place, the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center. The conference called the Remnant Warrior Conference. Some great speakers there, Paul McGuire, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Michael Lake, Coach Dave, Pastor Paul Begley. Sharon and I will be there, and we hope you can be there as well. We just encourage you to act soon, register soon, because at the end of December, the $99 registration rate goes up to $129, but you can add another $20 off. Use the promo code Gilbert20, Gilbert20. That knocks you right down to $79, but only through December 31st. So take advantage of that soon at hearthewatchmen.com. Speaking of Scotland, Sharon and I will be there in April, late April 24th through 26th. We are coming to Scotland for the Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference. It's the first ever. This will be in Troon, which is in Ayrshire, near Glasgow. We're speaking there with Pastor Billy Crone and Jim Barfield, director of the Copper Scroll Project. Evangelist Stephen Wright, crossing over from Ireland to speak as well. We'll be there speaking each of the 3 days. Sharon and I both speaking along with Pastor Billy, Jim Barfield, Stephen Wright. The cost for all 3 days, £54.50. Single-day tickets, just £29.50. For more information and to reserve your place for the Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference in late April of 2020, log on to scottishbibleprophecyconference.brushfire.com. That's scottishbibleprophecyconference.brushfire.com. We'll be in San Antonio in June for the Battle Ready Conference, the True Legends Conference in July in Branson. I'm honored to be one of the speakers, along with L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, Russ Dizdar, Dr. Michael Lake, Gary Wayne, Carl Tricrib, and more. The theme, Ancient Cataclysms and Coming Catastrophes, Pre-Adam and the Return of the Days of Noah. Working on a new presentation for that one that I think you'll find very interesting. For more information on that conference, log on to gen6.com, GENSIX.com. SkyWatch TV's Defender Conference sold out for late August. Hope you'll be there for that. That is, that's going to be a beautiful setting and a great gathering. And then in September 6th through 13th, Sharon and I taking part in the Glacier Prophecy Summit. This is a prophecy cruise to Alaska. Gary Stearman of Prophecy Watchers, Pastor Billy Crone, L.A. Marzulli, and more. For more information, log on to glacierprophecysummit.com. And then in October 12th through 25th, the SkyWatch TV Tour of Israel with an optional 4-day extension in Sardinia. For more information, log on to skywatchtv.com/Israel Tour. If you get a spare moment, please leave us a review at Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever else you find us. Remember, A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Our opening theme, Iron Bacon by Kevin MacLeod. Our announcer, D.C. Good. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.